Hey Creepshow family, welcome back to the channel. Today we're diving into the dark side of genius. Having a high IQ doesn't always mean using it for good, and the criminals we're looking at today are proof of that. These 10 murderers all had genius-level IQs but chose to use their intelligence for evil, manipulating their victims and outsmarting authorities in chilling ways. So get ready, because we're counting down 10 murderers who used their genius IQs for evil. These cases show just how dangerous a sharp mind can be in the hands of a monster. Number 10. John Christie, IQ 128. During the 1940s and 1950s, John Christie murdered at least 8 women, including his own wife. Christie, who had an IQ of 128, displayed strong mathematical abilities from a young age, which might have hinted at his intelligence. But instead of using his gifts for good, Christie turned to a life of deception and murder. Posing as a backstreet abortionist, Christie preyed on vulnerable women seeking help for unwanted pregnancies. He lured them to his home at 10 Rillington Place in Notting Hill, London. Once inside, Christie used cooking gas to knock his victims unconscious before strangling them to death. He then hid their bodies in various parts of his house, some in a secret kitchen nook, others buried in the yard or under the floorboards. Christie's most infamous crime occurred in 1949, when Beryl Evans, her husband Timothy Evans, and their 1-year-old daughter Geraldine moved into the apartment above Christie. Christie murdered both Beryl and Geraldine and framed Timothy for their deaths. Tragically, Timothy Evans was wrongfully executed for the murders, a miscarriage of justice that would later contribute to the 1965 abolition of the death penalty in the United Kingdom. Despite the house being demolished, the memory of John Christie's crimes continues to haunt those familiar with the horrors of 10 Rillington Place. Stay tuned as we delve deeper into the twisted minds of more genius murderers. Number 9. Ted Bundy, IQ 136. Ted Bundy is one of the most notorious and hated serial killers in history. In the 1970s, he crisscrossed 7 states, leaving a trail of terror by murdering innocent young women and girls. For years, Bundy denied his crimes, maintaining his innocence, but he eventually confessed to 30 murders before his execution. Bundy wasn't just evil, he was highly intelligent, with an IQ of 136. After earning an honors degree in psychology from the University of Washington, he used letters of recommendation to gain acceptance into the University of Utah Law School in 1973. Despite his academic success, Bundy chose to apply his intelligence toward sinister ends. He used his charm and intelligence to manipulate his victims, often faking injuries or impersonating a police officer to lure them into vulnerable situations. His sharp mind also helped him escape prison twice, once from a courthouse library and another time from a jail cell, showing just how dangerous a clever criminal could be. Bundy's own attorney called him the very definition of heartless evil. His reign of terror ended with his execution by electric chair in 1989, but his name still haunts psychology students and true crime enthusiasts alike as they study the chilling behaviors and manipulative tactics that made him one of the most infamous killers in American history. Number 8. Lawrence Bittaker, IQ 138. Lawrence Bittaker, one half of the notorious Toolbox Killers duo, used his high intelligence, an IQ of 138, to carry out some of the most horrific crimes imaginable. Along with his partner, Roy Norris, Bittaker brutally tortured and murdered 5 teenage girls in 1979, using hand tools like pliers and hammers to inflict unimaginable pain. They kidnapped their victims in a van they called the Murder Mac, a blacked-out vehicle that allowed them to commit their heinous acts in secret. Though Bittaker struggled academically and dropped out of high school at 17, his high IQ hinted at untapped potential. Instead of using his intelligence for good, Bittaker turned to crime, beginning with small-time thefts that eventually landed him in California men's colony in San Luis Obispo. It was there that he met Roy Norris, a fellow inmate who shared his twisted fantasies. Psychological evaluations painted a disturbing picture of both men. Bittaker was described as borderline psychotic, while Norris exhibited a severe schizoid personality. Despite these red flags, both men were released on parole, and within months they began their gruesome killing spree. For 3 terrifying months in the summer of 1979, Bittaker and Norris carried out their sadistic murders. After their arrest, Norris cooperated with authorities, testifying against Bittaker in exchange for a life sentence. As for Bittaker, he was sentenced to death and currently remains on death row, awaiting execution for the horrifying crimes that shocked the nation. Number 7. Jeffrey Dahmer, IQ 145. Known as the Milwaukee Cannibal, Jeffrey Dahmer was one of the most infamous serial killers in history, responsible for the brutal murders of 17 men and boys. Despite his genius IQ of 145, which placed him in the top 2% of the population, Dahmer's horrifying actions revealed the depths of his disturbed mind. His gruesome habit of drilling holes in his victims' skulls in an attempt to create zombies is just one of many chilling aspects of his crimes. From a young age, Dahmer exhibited disturbing behavior. He was fascinated by animal bones, collecting roadkill, and obsessively manipulating their skeletons. After high school, Dahmer enrolled at Ohio State University in 1978, intending to study business. However, his heavy drinking habits quickly derailed his academic career, and he dropped out after just 3 months. He then joined the U.S. Army, where he received medical specialist training. Yet, Dahmer's dark side soon resurfaced, and after being accused of assaulting 2 fellow soldiers, he was honorably discharged. Over the next decade, Dahmer's mental health deteriorated, worsened by chronic alcoholism. His killing spree lasted from 1978 to 1991, during which he lured victims to his apartment, where he would murder and mutilate them. In 1991, one of Dahmer's victims managed to escape and led police back to Dahmer's apartment. Inside, authorities found Polaroids of dismembered bodies and human remains, including severed heads and body parts. As one medical examiner later described it, it was more like dismantling someone's museum than an actual crime scene. Dahmer confessed to all of his murders and was sentenced to life in prison. However, in 1994, another inmate bludgeoned Dahmer to death with a 20-inch iron bar, putting a brutal end to the life of one of the most notorious killers in American history. Stick around as we continue to uncover the dark minds of murderers who used their genius-level IQs for unspeakable evil. Number 6. Edmund Kemper, IQ 145. Edmund Ed Kemper, known as the Co-Ed Butcher, was responsible for the brutal murders of 11 people, including his own mother and grandparents. Standing 6'9", 2 centimeters, and weighing over 250 pounds, 113 kilon, Kemper was physically intimidating. With a genius IQ of 145, he also had the psychological prowess to manipulate and overpower his victims. Kemper's violent tendencies began early. He vented his frustration on animals, burying one alive and stabbing a family cat. His relationship with his mother was abusive, as she belittled him throughout his childhood. In an attempt to curb his aggression, Kemper's mother sent him to live with his paternal grandparents. But at the age of 15, Kemper's rage escalated, and he shot his grandmother after an argument. When his grandfather returned home, Kemper shot him as well, later explaining that he didn't want his grandfather to find out what had happened. Diagnosed with paranoid schizophrenia, Kemper was sent to a Atascadero State mental hospital. Despite his diagnosis, Kemper's high IQ allowed him to manipulate the mental health professionals into believing he was rehabilitated. At the age of 21, he was released. Kemper's killing spree began in 1972 when he murdered 6 female hitchhikers over the span of less than a year. His gruesome methods included decapitation and dismemberment. His final 2 victims were his own mother and her friend. After bludgeoning his mother to death with a hammer, Kemper decapitated her and engaged in disturbing post-mortem activities. He then invited her friend over, strangled her, and continued his killing. The day after his final murders, Kemper called the police and confessed to all of his crimes, displaying the same calm manipulation that had marked his earlier interactions with authorities. Kemper remains in prison, where he is serving multiple life sentences. Number 5. Andrew Cunanan, IQ 147. Andrew Cunanan was a spree killer whose high IQ of 147 and charm helped him manipulate others, but ultimately, his downward spiral ended in the murder of 5 people, including famed fashion designer Gianni Versace. Cunanan, who had a promising childhood, demonstrated remarkable intelligence at a young age, once memorizing an entire set of encyclopedias by the age of 10. However, his life was marked by deceit and early signs of antisocial personality disorder. Cunanan often fabricated extravagant stories, such as claiming his father was an Israeli millionaire, to present himself as more affluent and important than he was. He relied on relationships with wealthy older men to fund his lavish lifestyle. His fortunes turned when he moved in with Norman Blackford, a wealthy man who spoiled Cunanan with luxury cars and vacations in the south of France. However, when Blackford finally tired of Cunanan's behavior and threw him out, it triggered a series of events that would culminate in a violent spree. Criminal profilers later suggested that being cut off from Blackford deeply wounded Cunanan's ego, as his self-worth was tied to the finer things in life, what people could do for him. Without his accustomed luxury, Cunanan began a killing spree, starting with former friends and acquaintances, and culminating in the high-profile murder of Gianni Versace on the steps of his Miami Beach mansion on July 15, 1997. Cunanan was added to the FBI's 10 Most Wanted Fugitives list in June 1997, becoming the 449th fugitive on the list. After a nationwide manhunt, Cunanan was found dead a few weeks later in a houseboat on Miami Beach, having shot himself in the head at the age of 27. Number 4. Carroll Cole, IQ 152. Carroll Cole was a serial killer who murdered at least 15 women and 1 boy between 1948 and 1980. Despite his Guinness level IQ of 152, Cole's life was marred by a traumatic childhood and a series of escalating violent tendencies that ultimately led to his execution. Cole's early years were filled with abuse. His mother, in a bid to humiliate him, dressed him as a girl, and his classmates teased him relentlessly for his girl's name. Cole's first victim was a fellow student whom he drowned in a lake when he was a child. The incident was ruled an accident, leaving Cole free to continue down a dark path. In the 1960s, Cole's criminal behavior escalated. He first turned to petty theft, but then attacked a couple in a car. During questioning, he confessed to harboring fantasies about strangling women. Despite being diagnosed as an antisocial sociopath, Cole was released from psychiatric care after just 3 years, a decision that would have devastating consequences. From that point on, Cole's murder spree began as he drifted between states. Although the true number of his victims remains uncertain, Cole claimed to have killed at least 14 women over a span of 9 years. He often committed these murders while intoxicated, which led him to forget many of the details. After years of terror, Carroll Cole was finally caught, and in 1985, he was executed by lethal injection at Nevada State Prison. His story remains a chilling example of how unchecked mental illness, combined with high intelligence, can lead to horrifying consequences. Stay tuned as we continue exploring the disturbing minds of killers who use their genius for evil. Number 3. Charlene Gallego, IQ 160. Charlene Gallego was once a quiet, highly intelligent woman with an IQ of 160, a level of genius that helped her excel in school. However, her life took a dark turn after she met her future husband, Gerald Gallego, following 2 failed marriages. Together they formed a deadly team, earning the nickname the Love Slave Killers. From 1978 to 1980, Charlene and Gerald focused on targeting young women, often in their teens or early 20s. Using a van, they would kidnap their victims at gunpoint, shoving them into the back. Gerald would then sexually torture the victims before killing them, either by gunshot or strangulation. Together, they claimed at least 11 lives, including that of an unborn child. The couple's gruesome killing spree came to an end when a bystander witnessed one of their abductions and noted the license plate number. This led to their arrest, and while Gerald received the death penalty, Charlene struck a plea deal, securing a reduced sentence of 16 years in prison. Charlene, now living under the name Charlene Williams, was released in 1997 and has since started a new life. Her transformation from a highly intelligent woman to a notorious killer is a chilling example of how a sharp mind can be manipulated toward evil. Number 2. The Unabomber, IQ 167. Ted Unabomber Kaczynski was an anarchist, mathematics prodigy, and domestic terrorist with an astonishing IQ of 167. From an early age, Kaczynski displayed exceptional intellectual abilities. At just 16 years old, he was admitted to Harvard University, where he excelled academically. He later earned a Ph.D. in mathematics from the University of Michigan and became an assistant professor at the University of California, Berkeley. Despite his success, Kaczynski's academic career came to an abrupt end when he resigned, turning his back on society and embarking on a path of terrorism. In the late 1970s, Kaczynski retreated to a secluded cabin in Lincoln, Montana, where he lived off the grid and began his anti-technology crusade. Between 1978 and 1995, he sent a series of homemade bombs targeting people involved in modern technology, killing 3 and injuring 23. The media dubbed him the Unabomber after the FBI's code name for the case, Unabomb, University and Airline Bomber. Kaczynski's manifesto, titled Industrial Society and Its Future, was published in the Washington Post in 1995. Yet, he justified his violent actions as necessary to draw attention to the dangers of modern technology and its erosion of human freedom. The manifesto stated, "The bombs were extreme, but necessary to attract attention to the erosion of human freedom necessitated by modern technologies requiring large-scale organization." The breakthrough in the case came when Kaczynski's brother, David Kaczynski, recognized Ted's writing style in the manifesto and alerted the FBI. This crucial tip led to Ted Kaczynski's capture in 1996. He was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole, bringing an end to his deadly campaign against technology. Number 1. Rodney Alcala, IQ 170. Serial killer. Rodney Alcala is estimated to have an IQ ranging from 167 to 170, placing him among the most intelligent individuals in the world. However, his genius was twisted toward horrific ends. Between 1977 and 1979, Alcala brutally murdered 4 young women and a 12-year-old girl. His murder spree spanned California, New York, Wyoming, and possibly Washington, leaving a trail of terror in his wake. For years, Alcala evaded justice, but new DNA testing in the early 2000s linked him to several murders. In a bizarre twist during his trial, Alcala, acting as his own lawyer, cross-examined himself on the stand, switching between voices as he asked and answered questions about the killings. Despite his disturbing courtroom antics, the trial ended with Alcala receiving a death sentence. However, he remains on death row in California. Alcala earned the nickname the Dating Game Killer after appearing on the popular ABC TV show The Dating Game during his murder spree. Although he won the date on the show, the woman ultimately refused to go out with him, describing him as creepy. In an interview after the show, she revealed, "I started to feel sick. He was behaving somewhat spooky. I said no to his offer. I was determined to never see him again." Her instinct may have saved her life. That concludes today's video for the Creepshow family. These cases demonstrate that intelligence, when combined with dark desires, can be truly terrifying. If you found this episode as chilling as I did, make sure to hit that like button, share it with your friends, and subscribe for more deep dives into the darkest corners of true crime. Until next time, stay curious, stay safe, and remember, sometimes the smartest minds can have the darkest intentions. See you in the next video.